All right. Hello, Idiots on Parade, the Too Ugly for TV podcast, the bonus podcast, the vodcast, if you will. If you're listening to the audio, you can find us on YouTube and watch our ugly faces as we talk. That is Barrett Antar Goodwin, musician in Philadelphia. Hello, my friend.
Hey, how are you, sir?
I am well. I am Nathan Timmel, comedian in Iowa. Barrett and I have been friends for longer than Methuselah was alive. And we talk to one another and record it because we have egos that are out of control and we think people should listen to us.
Absolutely.
I don't know. Before we get going tonight, I not last week's conversation, but jumping over that, got a comment on how to break out of the small town mindset that we can explore in the future. It was that it just wasn't small towns, not conservative politically, but just conservative in general, where anything different was deemed bad. And the instant that was said, I was like, yeah, that's right. You know, if you didn't like what was popular or the home football team, if you were the kid with the long hair or liked theater or what, if you were different in any way, that was bad. So that'd be something interesting. And then I also thought of, well, what about the reverse? What about conservative people in big cities? How do they feel with that different sort of peer pressure? Something to think about for the future. But tonight, a friend of mine, we have a guest. Let's bring him in. We have Michael Young here. Hello, Michael.
Hello.
The reason we have Michael here is Antar and I, Barrett, my friend, we have had an atheist friend of mine on a couple times, and we talk about religion and his being an atheist. And Barrett and I have both expressed, I won't speak for Barrett, but I think I'm not going to get this wrong, sort of not a desire, but just sort of an interest, like, you know, it'd be nice to be a believer, to be able to just have that out there for you, where if there's a problem, you can just take a step back and go, okay, I don't like what I'm going through, but I believe in this power, this force that watches over me or the world, or it would be nice to have that, but neither of us do. And you do. You are a Christian?
Yeah.
Okay, and so I thought it'd be nice to have you come on and talk about your faith and how you developed that faith and became the person you are, and how you maintain and continue that faith in a world that all you have to do is walk outside and say, are you really sure there's a grand scheme to all of this and it's not just chaos?
Yeah.
So, Barrett, did I speak for you correctly, or is there anything you want to change before we get going?
No, that's pretty much it. I will say in advance, I just pulled my shoulder somehow, doing somehow. Nothing. Exactly. I just went and, put my sweater on and somehow
you put a shirt on and you're old, and that's what happens.
Right. If you see me like wincing when you're talking, it's not because of something you said. It's because my body's falling apart. Anyway, it's exciting. It's nice to meet you, Mike.
Nice to meet you.
I like that you said that, because that would be a great thing. Like, Michael goes, okay, let me tell you how I found Jesus. And Barrett goes, oh.
Right, exactly.
And I'd say, let me fix that for you.
Right. Oh, God.
So go ahead. How did you find faith? Was it something you were raised in? Did you discover it later in life? How do you maintain? Just
yes and yes.
Questions if we needed.
Thank you so much, Nathan, for the opportunity to be on with you tonight. I unapologetically am a person of faith. My faith is certainly complex, and I don't know that I can really be boxed into a particular hole, if you will. I was raised as a Methodist here in Iowa.
What is a Methodist? That's one thing we've talked about in the past.
Yeah.
I don't understand the difference between Christian, Catholic, Presbyterian, Methodist. Did I already say Baptist? I don't understand anything under the umbrella of religion. Okay. So if you want to start there, please.
Yeah. And I'll also start by saying that I've always been intrigued by questions of meaning of life, existence, supernatural questions, if you will. And so when I got to be of college age, I didn't want to study economics. I didn't want to study history. And so I studied philosophy and religion, and I got my degree in philosophy and religion. So for 4 years at Rollins College in Florida, I got to talk with surprisingly intelligent people who had lots of disparate views about the world and about the existence and meaning of life and things of that nature. So when I say I was a Methodist, Methodism is obviously just it's not obvious. It's a denomination of Christianity. So I would guess pretty much a vanilla strain, if you will, of Christianity. My family went to church more times than we didn't. We celebrated holidays together. I was confirmed, I think, at maybe 14 years of age. But after that, my high school years and my college years, I for all intents and purposes, rejected Christianity, probably just because it was a popular thing to do. But I had garnered enough information about the Christian faith that it was something that stayed with me. And so I'll give you the sort of abridged version from 0 to 60, and then maybe we'll go back and talk about some other things. But I would say while I was learning about Hinduism and Buddhism and Judaism and atheism and pretty much all of the world's religions over 4 years, and studying philosophers and atheists, many atheists and agnostic philosophers as well, I definitely started to shape my views about, again, why are we here? How did we get here? And what things do you do to have a meaningful life? And that's really where faith comes into play for me, is how do we derive meaning and how do we create meaning on an ongoing basis? And so as I moved into my later 20s, I felt, if you will, it's a cosmic sort of supernatural compelling back to Christ, probably because it was how I was trained up. But I not only knew that I wanted God, a higher power in my life, but that I'd always been recognizing something outside of myself. So there was an internal pulling towards God. And somewhere in my late 20s, I suppose I was 26 or 27 years old, I said, I am a Christian. And then I started really to deeply look into the matters of faith. And I would challenge other Christians to talk with me about the Bible and the things that I thought weren't terribly consistent for New Testament and Old Testament, and how, there could be questions of evil, things of that nature. And I've always been fascinated in those questions. And in all candor, I lived in the South, and I met some really wonderful people who I felt embodied what Jesus means to me. And I also felt people who bludgeoned others with their faith to keep people out and to segregate further from other people. And so I was disenchanted from that. And so ultimately, I guess that's sort of the genesis of my faith journey. From there, I've just been taking in all the bits and pieces that I could along the way. But to clarify, I see Jesus Christ as an authentic historical figure. From where I sit, we all know he lived. He was a real person. His crucifixion is a matter of historical fact. So one of the things that you guys might find interesting is when I talk to people who are Christians, Christian to me, Catholic, Methodist, Baptist, Lutheran, any of these Christian offshoots, Orthodox, if you believe that Jesus Christ was actually resurrected, then you're a Christian. And if you don't, then you have some other type of religion or none at all.
I'd like to go back a little bit, because one thing I found interesting that you said in there is the study of religions and philosophies and Buddhism and Taoism. When you were on that path, and then you said you rejected Christianity for a while, you said this was the fast version. Let's dig into it a little more. What made Christianity stand out for you as opposed to heading down a Buddhist path or any other path that I can't think of? Islamic. You could converted to Judaism. I just named the big three, but there are many religions. How did you not end up a Scientologist? What was it, just the childhood thing where you said, you know what, this was my childhood and it's coming back full circle? Or were there, and language is imperfect here, so I don't mean what I'm about to say, and I don't want to put this burden on you. Were there air quotes, flaws in the other religions that you found them to be not true? And again, that might be pushing too far, but what are your thoughts given that?
Thank you for that, for the question and the opportunity to clarify and dig a little deeper. I would say I was fascinated with the world's other religions, first and foremost. And also, I think one of the things that's missing in the world today, and one of the reasons I was excited to be on your podcast is people are so mean to each other about this. Like that's one of the things that I struggle with so much is at its genesis, any search for God is a search for more meaning, and everybody's not going to look at it alike. And so I spent very little time rejecting any elements. And in fact, and this is something I want to touch on, I'm sure we'll get into it later, but to me, truth isn't the most important thing in the pursuit of your faith. It's equally as much effect. When I see how faith can positively encourage or affect or comfort someone's life, that's validation enough for me. So I had more information about Christianity because I grew up in that faith. And so I probably tended to steer a little bit into that lane. But I got very comfortable with Buddhism and Hinduism and candidly, Islam is one of the ones that I'm most frustrated with in the world today because, we've seen the actions of a few dictate a whole national ideology about how we're going to treat a huge group of people. And the truth is that
let me jump in. When you say frustrated by Islam, do you mean the religion, or what you said right after it was, do you mean you're frustrated with the perception of Islam? Because that's what it sounds like you were saying.
Precisely. I'm incredibly frustrated that a small,
because not many people watch this, but the right one does, and suddenly it's jihad for you because, like, how dare he?
Yeah, and this is the thing. I also tend to believe that I think if you lock two people in a room for a week and they didn't have anybody else to talk to, no matter where they came from, maybe this is overly simplistic, but I tend to think most of the time they'd be friends when they got done, because that's what life is about. It's about finding commonality. And to me, when I see someone who practices any faith religiously, I have tremendous respect for that, because it's a pursuit of betterment. It's a pursuit of truth. It's a pursuit of kindness. It's a pursuit of your essential self. However, you think that, none of us have an unlimited amount of time. So we've got to be selective. For me, though, so I looked at all these other religions and I discounted none of them. In fact, I practiced some of them. I've done tons of meditation and study, and I love Eastern religion, and I still meditate several times a week. When I see a Muslim friend celebrate their faith, I celebrate with them. And because I think there's one God, and I even think when you talk about the big three, even the folks, go ahead.
I was going to say, isn't that isn't that the biggest misconception between the big three is you find people that don't understand that basically the God of the Quran, the God of the Torah, and the God of the Bible are the same God. It's
God.
Like Christians get confused, and I'm putting the onus on Christians, but they get confused when they hear Allah and they say, no, they worship the wrong God. It's God, and it's like, it's the same God. It's the same fucking God. The Christian God is the Islam. It's just, and in fact, Jesus is like a main character in the Quran. They say Jesus fucking tits up, but just not the Messiah.
He's a Jew.
Yeah, that's he's a Jew. Well, it's the separation is they don't. Yeah. Christians say, okay, I could be wrong here, and again, being overly simplistic, Jesus came down and said, hey, don't follow me, emulate me. And Christians went, holy shit, emulate. Or he said, don't worship me, emulate me. And Christians said, holy shit, worship him. Whereas Muslims said, yeah, emulate him, but don't worship him. Is that sort of close?
I think you're right on. And I'm so pleased with the nature of your questioning, because so often I think everyone's in a hurry to get to the end, to find out where we depart and what takes us apart from one another. And I don't think it's about that at all. In fact, any of us who are pursuing God, to me. Not God is such a nebulous term, and these are some of the funny things. Christians, you're right, though, have really been the ones who have said, "Oh, it has to be exactly like this." And your point about emulation of Christ, like that's what I try to do in my day-to-day life, is be like Christ. If I think about things and I use a Christ filter, the bracelet, what would Jesus do? Jesus would feed poor people. Jesus would make sure that everyone had insurance. Jesus wouldn't own a handgun.
You try to be like Christ, yet you don't have hair or a beard.
I know. I tried. I had a little bit of a beard, and the hair.
It was getting too serious. I had to throw something in for a moment, just because I am by nature an asshole.
Well, let me ask you, Mike. So, two things. One, how would you? One, do you think that Christianity could be one of the things that really pulls this country back together? If so, how would you present it to young people in a way that would make sense to them and they could latch onto it? And how would you deal with the flip side of it, who are the people who call themselves Christians but wouldn't feed the poor people, think that Jesus comes with an AK-47, and what would you do in that way?
And let me just jump on that and say it's not that they wouldn't feed the poor people; it's that they actively don't.
Exactly. Right.
We read about it all the time, and part of the issue is we don't want to turn anything into a monolith and say everything is this way. But we hear a lot these days about evangelicals who seem to throw all the teachings of Jesus under the bus so that they can worship a figurehead. And we don't have to go too political here, but I think everybody, I didn't really hide that one too well, and I'm not trying to, but I don't want to go down a too deep.
I don't mind saying I have been a lifelong Republican. That'll be interesting, and I will just tell you, I didn't vote for this guy either time.
Right.
And I don't
feel questions first, because before we
answer your question. So I think that yes, I definitely think that Jesus could play a very positive role in the cohesion of America, a new cohesion of America. And one of the reasons I have optimism about that is it all depends on how we tell the story, and the mythology of Christ that's why I said a while back that the truth and the effect can be equally important. Sometimes the effect can be more important, even if we only saw Jesus as a mythological creature, which he wasn't. There's still tremendous value in acting like Christ. And one of the things I'm encouraged by is I have 8 children. And so they're 25, 21, 21, 20, 19, 17, 15, and 7. And
wait, I thought you said you were Methodist. You're sounding like Catholic.
Well, that's you missed that part. I actually did convert to Catholicism along the way.
Okay.
Follow-up
question: can you name them all?
Yes, but I won't. Yes, I know I can. Yeah. It's like Bobby, Mickey, Mikey, Tommy, Polly. Yeah, from Goodwill Hunting. My point is, I think that definitely Jesus can be an influence in bringing people back together again, and it is in the same line of thinking. The politics of America and the religious politics of America over the past several years go back to what I was saying before about bludgeoning another group of people and blindly dismissing the obvious things that someone who's a Christian should believe and practice. That's one of my major sources of frustration as well. The idea, even I laugh all the time, the idea of a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus is ridiculous. Jesus was a brown man with brown eyes and olive skin. And we have people running around in America who have absolutely no sense whatsoever of who Jesus was. Go ahead.
At least he did have a 6-pack, didn't he? Like we usually see where he's just ripped.
At least at the end.
Blonde.
At least at the end he did.
Well, then his ribs were showing because he was emaciated after 3 days, but
could be that. But I think if we would start to have discussions, a lot of my optimism comes from 2 things. One is it comes from the way that things have changed, and I don't think that they're nearly far enough along yet, but for gay people in America, I look at how young people, again, I mention all my children because I talk with them about these things a lot, the college and the high school age kids. And I know I had two fraternity brothers who came out as gay after college, and their time in 1988 to 1992 was miserable for them. They had to live a life that wasn't authentic for them at all because they were fearful. At least it's getting a lot better, and it's getting a lot better because I think there's a lot of kids that are more tolerant, that want to hear a message of kindness and of hope. And I think the things that Jesus stands for very specifically are those things. You know, we get into the weeds about what things you have to do to go to heaven, and it's ridiculous. To me, as I believe in some sort of afterlife, but I have no mechanism of understanding exactly what that's going to look like. But that to me isn't even the reason to be a Christian. The reason to be a Christian is to say, this is a person in all of history that I could say if I wanted to be like, I would really try to be like that. And I think that can resonate with any good person.
Now, are your children religious?
No.
Okay.
Probably because of my hodgepodge. If I have a failure as a father, which are many, that's probably the biggest one, is we have these conversations. We have deep philosophical conversations, particularly the older ones, but even the little one. We talk about Jesus, but I actually, again, I think that the way organized religion has depicted Jesus and the way that we've used him as a battering ram for specific causes, again, conservative causes, those things don't sit well with me. So I don't think, we don't go to church. I mean, honestly, we go to church a couple times a year, but I pray every day.
Well, I want to jump on what you just said. What do you mean by, you said failing as a father, that they are not religious, that you gave them free will, so to speak, and they chose not to? Would you call that a failing, or were you meaning that in a different sense? Like, obviously you love your kids and you don't disown them like, oh, I failed, you're not religious, you're all going to hell. It doesn't seem like you have anything against that. Like they live their own lives and you raise them to be good people. So I take it that was either tongue in cheek, or did I miss a meaning?
No, I maybe I wasn't clear, which happens from time to time. I would say more that I think because of my background educationally and the time I've spent pursuing spirituality and faith and questions that are important to me, existential questions, I believe I could have done a better job, and I will try to do a better job going forward of fleshing out where they stand on all these things. I have no desire for them to adopt my exact brand of Christianity or really anything like it. They could all say they're not Christians. And because again, at the end of the day, I do believe in God, but I think we're all pursuing the same outcome. And I don't think anybody's prohibited from getting to that outcome.
Where do you weigh in on the Bible? Because I guess the question is like, I mean, I've heard many different interpretations of different sections of it.
Yeah.
But if you believe that, I mean, are your children baptized?
Yes.
Okay. And so I guess the question is, do you believe that, hold on, I think Siri is somehow listening to us. Do you think that,
Along with the NSA, yes.
right, exactly. You know, I believe he said something to the effect of the only way to the Father is through me. And if your children don't accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior, what do you think happens to them when they die?
Yeah. I would ask okay, that's a great question. I think that the same thing happens to all of us when we die. I think that. Secondly, I think that when Christ says that the way to the Father is through me, I'm not interpreting that in the most literal sense at all.
Okay.
I'm suggesting that I'm even open to the possibility that Jesus Christ literally rose in his physical body. Maybe he's just the only person that ever figured out how to do it. It's a good party trick. I'm open to that. It doesn't really matter that much to me, but I'd like to see somebody else do it sometime. But it doesn't matter to me whether that actually happened. I don't believe in hell. To be candid with you, I believe in a higher. I mean, some of the things that are fascinating to me is I've read a lot of Einstein's thoughts on religion, and he considered himself a religious person, but in a very specific way. He said there are 3 reasons why people pursue faith at all. And the first one are social and moral concerns, and it's the environment that we're in. Our families and our friends and our peers push us to be part of this community, so we seek faith because of that. The second one is fear. It's obviously I don't want to go to hell, and I want to have some meaning in my life, so I may be driven to faith by fear. And the third is where really the camp that I come down in, which I always feel good anytime I think remotely like Einstein, is the cosmic perception of religion. And we all feel these things, if we're being honest. Like I listen, Nathan, to the thing, even though you're sarcastic all the time, I listen to the things that you say and the kindness that you have and the thoughtfulness. And Barrett, I'm delighted to be able to spend a little time. I can see it in your smile. Like we all recognize when things happen in our lives that just shouldn't have happened. I mean, I at least I think that. I've met dozens of people that I walk away thinking that's just not coincidence. And I believe in the continuity of energy. And I believe that we exchange energy, even right now, with people all the time. And that's God to me. And it exists in nature. And it's the first mover, So yes, I don't believe that all of this came of nothing. I don't have a mind big enough to understand what the creator is or what the first mover is or why Jesus was particularly important to whomever, whatever energetic source created our universe. But I do know that living matter doesn't die. That's a scientific fact that we've all agreed upon. So there really is no death either. There's no death for anyone.
I was thinking, if there might be a fourth reason for religion, would you consider inertia a reason? Well, my grandparents and my parents, and it just sort of gets passed down, and people, for whatever reason, and this is inappropriate phrasing, I apologize, they just don't break free of it. You said you broke free and then returned. My mother, I was raised just secular. My mom was raised Catholic, and the agreement she had is with her parents, or her mom at least, was one that actually I think is an old running Catholic joke. When you're 18, you can quit. And so when she turned 18, yes. And then her sister, quit, and everybody walked away. And then her mom went, all right, if you're not going to do it anymore, neither am I. And they all just sort of were done, because after having 18 years of, this is the way, they were done. And so when I came around, they did not return and say, well, now we have to get the kid baptized. So I grew up not really understanding religion, as I made clear up front, with I don't understand the differences. And so, that's my background. Bear, what's your background? Did you if you want to share, like that's why I'm not religious, is I just was not brought up that way. And I'll share quickly with you, I did study the Bible under a priest in college for 1 year. And it was a great guy, and we became friends, and we go out to eat, and great conversations. And he was very open with the fact, he said a lot of these stories in the Bible, they're not literal, they're allegories, they're ideas, and they're meant to spread ideas. And I thought that was great, but it didn't make me go, now I want to worship this. It just made me enjoy understanding it. I also took a higher level course in Buddhism, which I found fascinating. Couldn't tell you a goddamn thing about Buddhism today, but I remember at the time I wrote a pretty decent, I got an A in the course, like I understood. So I have flirted with religion too, and I like the idea of it, as I said up front. But when push comes to shove, I always come back to the very end of, it's all sort of silly. And maybe that's inappropriate, but I just, I started with a question or a thought, inertia. I guess was, and then I gave you my background, and
inertia meaning you're just stuck. There's nothing to push you off center.
Well, and I meant that in the sense of why religion keeps going is because it just keeps getting handed down, and people just like, okay, I guess I'm religious. Barrett, what was your experience as a child, and what brought you to where you are today?
I mean, my experience was pretty varied, I suppose. You know, my father, I believe, was Episcopalian. I think my mother, I think, grew up Baptist. I don't know. I didn't go to church much as a kid, except with my grandparents. With my parents every now and then, but really with my grandparents, with friends. And I would say that it sounds silly now because it's just such a ridiculously overused word, but I grew up more spiritual than I grew up religious. You know, but this is a Christian nation, so you can't kind of help but being indoctrinated to a certain degree, you know what I mean, with the Christian, the way that, like, it kind of seeps into all the movies and seeps into all the stuff. And the Bible is really just part of our popular culture to a degree. So, you know, if I had to be anything, I suppose, if I were to choose a religion, like pick one, you know, I suppose it would most likely be Christian, just because it would be the most practical thing to be. Like if I wanted to get in, see, like I think there's a fourth reason why people have religion, and I think it's in. Well, we have five now. Right.
Inertia was the
I think that the inertia is part of it, but I think that the inertia comes from a place because I think we're not good. Like I don't believe in original sin. Like I think that's like a silly concept that we're born, you know, evil, but we're definitely like
dicks.
We're not good. You know what I mean? Like we're not good. Like we need, like everybody who's willing to admit it knows that there's a side of them that's really not good. You know what I mean? Like we know that there's a reason why there have to be laws against people pushing each other down flights of stairs and stuff. There's a reason why there's laws for that, and it's because left to our own devices, like we're not actually good. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a choice. Like when you do good in a day, it's because you wake up and made a choice.
Yeah.
Like you choose to be good. You choose to do the right thing. You choose to make these things, or maybe it's just habit. You do it long enough that it becomes how you act on a regular basis. But I feel like religion's function to me, if I look throughout history, is to kind of tame that wildness inside of us that is not good. Do you know what I mean? Like if you look throughout history, the things that humans have done to each other for thousands of years up to today, perfectly rational people running around the streets, beating each other up in the name of whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like nothing.
What about, just to go the other end, what about all the horrible things done through the dawn of time up to today in the name of whatever religion?
I mean, right, like, yeah, right, like, but I think that they start off, like, the religions start off, like, Jesus is the King of Peace, and yet within 150 years of his death, they're slaughtering people in his name. They're killing the children of heretics in the name of the King of Peace, the great Redeemer, right? Like,
well, listen, it's one of my favorite things. Sorry to interrupt. One of my favorite things is the point that you just made. It's actually one of the reasons I'm a Christian, is I believe, see, I always look for inconsistencies or contrarian points of view within a framework. And so, for instance, to me, I think if Paul and many of the other apostles for the first 80 to 100 years got their heads cut off so that they could continue to tell that they saw Jesus be resurrected and that he is the living God, I think at some point in time they would have said, nah, just let me keep my head. You know, I'd rather not be decapitated and just move on. But they did believe. And so that's an aspect of what I believe to be compelling truth. Nathan, you made an interesting point too, though, about because in advance of this opportunity to speak with you, I did a little bit of reading, and it's interesting because one of the things that always comes up is the number of people that have been killed around the world because of religious battles, wars, what have you. But interestingly, from 1900 to 2017, there are 150 million people killed by atheist governments in the world.
But
so I'm
25
only
million
saying
of that came from the Soviet Union in World War II. So
yeah, and
big
Pol
chunk right
Pot
there.
and the Chinese, and no, I'm saying that there are. I'm not making the numbers up. There's plenty of evil.
Yeah, people, we're not good. We're not good people.
We're not well.
We're not wired well.
That is interesting. Like, you actually caught me off guard with that idea, because I tend to think we are good, but that we are socialized into being selfish. And I think in America it's worse than anywhere else. And all of these little tribes that we're creating, there is no commonality. And it goes back to your earlier question, Barrett, about can Christianity be a part of the solution to making America be more cohesive? I think so. I think that Mr. Rogers too. Like, we've got to start. He's my favorite. He went to my college. I actually met him twice, but
That's awesome.
I think we need to start talking about how we be kind to other people, however that comes about. Another frustration for me, and when Nathan said you had an atheist on a few weeks ago, I'm very interested in this whole transition from atheism to agnosticism to faith. I'm just fascinated by how deeply we tie ourselves to one of those names. I know people who really are agnostic in the definition of the word, but they'll call themselves atheists. And to me, atheism is a tremendous arrogance to suggest that for certain that there's no God of any kind. Is at least as arrogant as suggesting that I know that Jesus Christ rose from the dead and was here to save me. Probably much more so. But it's not even that. It's that a lot, and I read a lot about Dawkins and even Bill Maher and a lot of the new atheism that's coming about. And I like to think I'm a reasonably bright person, but I see again the bludgeoning of other people with weaponizing intellect. It's unkind, and it misses the whole point of faith, which is that we're all sad, we're all lonely, we're all trying to figure out how to make it through this life. And so if we can find something, if I have a belief in a God, especially if it's a kind God that welcomes everybody, and that gets me to tomorrow. Like, I have suffered depression, panic attacks, and anxiety for 30 years, suicidal depression for a period of time. And I've gotten through it so far. And part of the reason that I've gotten through it is that I've felt spiritually, energetically connected to the rest of the world in a little way, but in a way that was meaningful enough to me that I'm still moving forward. And so that's why I think that sometimes atheism comes across like wanting to be the first one to tell kids there's no Santa.
That was me.
Yes, you were that.
Well, that was Truman. He actually, Barrett, I don't think you know this, but my 6-year-old told my 8-year-old there's no Santa because he was reading Calvin and Hobbes, and in Calvin and Hobbes, he saw the parents like hiding the presents, and stubbed his toe. Was like, I can't believe we have to do this. Calvin's gonna wake, whatever. It's so that's what he said. He said, "There's no Santa." I saw it in Calvin and Hobbes. I'm like, well, good for you. I want to circle back to something you've said a couple times about an accepting God and a loving God and open to all, and especially when you went back to the gay community. Yeah. This gets thrown at Islam a lot, and we touched on that too. We mentioned Islam. What gets thrown at Islam is the hey, why don't you good Muslims condemn the bad Muslims that are pest bombing? How do you feel Christians should, I don't know how to phrase this, handle fake Christians, for lack of a better term? The Christians that you say, well, gay
how should you respond to them?
Yeah, respond. I beat the hell out of them all the time verbally. The fake Christian. The fact is, it's not difficult to decipher what Jesus wanted. I discount the Old Testament mostly because even in the name of the New Covenant, if you will, if we want to be very religious, but I think Jesus would make it really fucking simple. Feed people that don't have food, put clothes on their backs, in the richest nation in America, make sure everybody can get health care. Again, this is coming from a guy who's been a conservative Republican most of my life. I'm a fiscal conservative, but I stood by for far too long and watched other people that were in beneficial positions like I've been financially in my life spout their Christianity and then do nothing about it. And it's been relentless bullshit. And it is on me to challenge them, you know. And I think that, and I do. Pretty much every opportunity that I get, I ask people, what did you do for somebody that was poor? What did you do for someone that's less fortunate? One of the interesting things for me in this last presidential election is that Pete Buttigieg was my preferred candidate for a number of reasons, not the least.
I caucused for. I went
me too.
For him. Iowa tried to give Buttigieg to the world.
Secretary of Transportation.
Yeah, and we said we got a Secretary of Transportation,
but the guy's genius. He's kind, and I'll share something because I think this is worth note. He was here in Iowa.
Wait, he's also isn't he a gay Christian? I mean, I know he's gay, but isn't he also a Christian too?
That's where I was going. He was here. Yeah, you got it. Boom, mind blown. He was here in Iowa, and there was a man in the back of the room that used a slur against Pete.
You can say it. We're already canceled for many things we've said before. You can say. I
just don't say those words. The other thing is, I'm sorry.
You want me to say it when you say yes or no? Because I'll let loose a string of slurs. And you can tell me what it
starts with an F. But anyway, so he used a slur, and he said, and this guy said, "You're not going to heaven," and like he always does, Pete said, "Well, sir, I'm a Christian also, and I'm very thankful that God gets to decide the ultimate fate of my soul and not you. But I would also still like to be your president, and I would look after your family, and I would try to make Iowa and America better for your family." That's what a Christian says. That's what a Christian says. Pete Buttigieg is perfect Christian in my mind, and that's the hope, you know, that I spoke to earlier, Barrett, is that I think that I'd like everybody to talk about Jesus, even if it was from a mythological sense. If they don't believe even in his existence, which I could show you extra biblically is true.
Well, let me ask you a question. Again, not trying to be contrary here.
Yeah.
But when you say you discount the Old Testament,
yeah,
that was actually Jesus's Bible. So what you're saying is the Bible that Jesus grew up on, that is the foundation of his faith, ultimately, is one that you discount.
Yes.
Can I jump in here quickly, though?
Please.
Isn't that, though, I mean, we're seeing that right now in a different way. That is what every younger generation does, is it tears down the generation that came before, which is right now we have millennials and boomers yelling at one another. So, because there's one thing I remember from the Bible, isn't Jesus rent the curtain at the temple and said all should have access to God, because before Jesus came along, it was the not priests, Jewish priests, rabbis, the access to God was tightly controlled, and Jesus was a hippie who said, no, there is no control when it comes to God. I will all have access to God. So
let me teach you about God.
He saw the Torah and said, this can be redone, which brings me to something that I always find confusing, but you seem to have a handle on, Michael, is that I always find it interesting when Christianity sort of gets stuck in, well, this is what the Bible says. It's like, well, everything gets edited for the present and or the better. So why can't Christianity say, yeah, that anti-gay stuff was pretty dumb. Let's just keep moving forward. Okay, so no pork that's not Christianity, but still was probably a trichinosis thing. You can have bacon. Like, just examine everything that was said at the time and say, look, the parables, the teachings, the love, that's all still good. Let's not worry about the bullet points that are a little off.
The nuances. I mean, I almost quit being a Christian when I found out I couldn't eat shrimp, from the Old Testament. But
technically, you shouldn't eat shrimp just because it's nasty.
I love it. But the truth is, the Old Testament and Jesus said this. Yes, that was the Bible of the people at Jesus' time. From where I sit, if Jesus was in fact the Son of God, then he pretty much gets to play by whatever rules he wants to, any more or less. any more. Listen, guys, it's my fucking ball, and I'm going home. You want to play or not?
They're saying Jesus is Eric Cartman. That sounds scary.
Yes. Yes. So Christ, he did in fact say, this is the new covenant. What I bring is, I mean, he created a new contract effectively. And as we said, whether he means you can get to the Father through me, through emulating me, through practicing this way, it's the highest level of existence of your being. At the end of the day, I don't even really care what happens. If I die and it's just blackness afterwards, that's okay too. And if I end up reconnected with this wonderful energy source that everybody's part of, which is kind of what I believe will happen, then that's beautiful. And if there's some sort of heaven where I get to see my grandfather, that's really cool too. But I want to spend the rest of my life focused on things that help other people and do spread love and challenging. I think it's important sometimes to stand up and get in the fight. When people when they're not behaving as Christians. I often said, in the history of humankind, there have only been several items that were created as implements of human death, right? I mean, they're not that many. Handguns are one of them. I was raised in a house where my dad was chief of police. So we had guns all over our house, loaded guns. I've never owned them. I'm all for the Second Amendment, and I want people to be able to legally own guns responsibly. But I ask my Christian friends this question, and they can never give me a good answer. I'm like, do you suppose Jesus would have owned a handgun? It's an implement of human death. That was the reason that weapon, unlike a shotgun or a rifle, was created, was to kill human beings.
Isn't the comical answer usually that Jesus would have owned a nail gun or something?
Okay. Yeah, so let them have nail guns. Let them eat cake. But that's the stuff. I look for these things. I love this conversation because I feel a connectivity. I love when I think about Jesus, it makes me happy. When I think about our spirits being connected, about the possibility that there is energy in the three of us that translates through this media, and that you can feel a little bit of who I am and I can feel a little bit of who you guys are. I believe that. Like I think if we actually pay attention, we're so much closer to each other than we've ever been. But people don't want to do the right thing. And I don't know if it's because we're bad. I think it's because we're selfish. And I think we've been trained to be more and more selfish.
Well, I don't know that we've been trained, but I think that people, I don't like to blame, but they would say the media is liberal or right wing, depending on the source. And I don't think it's either. I think it's sensationalistic. I think it just wants to scare us. And so, especially in more recent history, we focus on differences when that is detrimental to the whole. I tell Barrett this every week. I bring up my stupid high school friends, and I call them stupid because they are. And I think they're great. I love them. They're great guys. And they have the IQ of a potato. And when we talk about the Packers or our kids or the old days, it's all great. We generally don't talk about politics, and when we do, it doesn't get heated. They send me, easily debunked things. I respond with facts, and then they go away for a little while, and then we just talk about the Packers or what are you up to or how's work. When you ignore the 2 to 3% of differences in one another and focus on the 97% similarities, it's so much easier. But you say trained to focus. I think it's just we're being trained, and social media isn't helping. And I'm not even going to go down that path, but as we've learned, the algorithms that just put us in echo chambers where we're told we're right without seeking out opposing points of view, and that creates separation, and it is very unhealthy and very damaging.
I ask my atheist friends and agnostic friends often, a lot of the people that I know that fall into the agnostic and atheist camps are among the more intellectually gifted people that I know. And I have real respect for their pursuit of science, or their, you know, wanting to not believe in, the invisible friend. Or I mean, some of it I get intellectually, I do, but I also think, sometimes they're not being honest with themselves, even about their own experience of being alive and the connectivity that we do all have. And I also think I examine it in through the lens of, is it kind or not? Is it good for us to argue with Christians who hate gay people? For sure. I mean, I'll beat the tar out of those people verbally all day long, but I don't want to take away hope from people that use their faith as a tool to get through hard times, or also to find a better part of themselves. Because the thing is, most of the folks that we encounter, like you mentioned, your high school friends, most people in America aren't terribly intellectually gifted. and anything that helps them get to a little better place should be celebrated.
Yeah, but unfortunately, when I talk about the better place is, close the borders and make this country more hateful. That's somehow a better place. And
that's not Christian.
But I'm not saying they're Christian.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just saying that their better place. I had an argument with one where I went and pointed out, and I'm independent. I'm registered independent. I'm not Democrat. Here's the funny thing. People on the woke left think I'm evil because I'm not woke enough, and Trumpers think I'm liberal because I don't worship at the altar of Trump, whereas I'm just a normal middle of the road kind of guy.
Me too.
And so one of my friends that was voting for Trump, I pointed out, I said, look, you have a small business that you own and run. You are your own business person.
Yeah.
So that means you need a good economy. Here are the facts. The economy has grown under Democrats above and beyond what Republicans have done. And in recent history, Republicans have crashed it. Bush Sr. led us into a recession. Bush Jr. crashed the economy. And look what Trump did. And by the way, the recession started in February before COVID. Go. And his response was, yeah, but I just don't trust the Democrats. And I'm like, God damn it. So this better place, it's not a better place. And so it has nothing to do with Christianity, but something you said made me think of that. And because I'm stupid, I started talking and lost focus, and I have no idea where I'm going now. So I'll shut up.
Barrett, what do you got?
I mean, if we're going to talk about Democrats and why people hate them, I can give you 1,000 reasons.
We've talked about why people, because they're so fucking smug and
right. I mean,
it's true.
One of my friends came over yesterday and was ranting about how he was saying how Nancy Pelosi didn't want to sign the bill until January, and he was saying this for months, and then everybody said he was wrong. Now she just admitted that she's been holding off on signing off on the stimulus package or some shit, whatever. I don't know if that's true or not.
In fact, the opposite is they're going to sign a small bill because they know they'd get another one under Biden. So it's like people are saying, the Democrats aren't fighting hard enough. And it's like, they're just going to take something for now because people need it now. And then Biden will come in and help later. So I don't think the whole showing of now Biden's in office, we're going to sign. I don't think that's true at all. I've not heard any of
that. What it always comes down to for me is the same thing with the atheists and all the and the hardcore Christians. At a certain standpoint, I have to wonder. The one thing that always puzzles me about atheists is why they care so much about because atheism to me seems to function, other than that it doesn't have a messiah, it functions very much like a religion. Do you know what I mean? In the way that there's like a dogma and there's a party line and there's all this stuff and there's the anger at the people who are not like them. It's like the amount of otherizing that happens through atheists. I'm like, well, that's not good either. And they bring up the point like that everyone brings up. They're right? People slaughter in the name of religion and things like that. And it's like, yeah, but people slaughter in the name of all kinds of things, and religion just happens to be one of them.
Yeah.
And so I do that I hold on, my Siri keeps on jumping in. I do find it, when I look at the way that the foundations of religion happened in this country, and I watch what it went through, I understand why people have real problems with it. You know what I mean? Like, there's real obvious reasons to have problems with Christianity, not Christianity, with Christians, right? And I used to work in a church, and that's what they asked me. They said, "Are you a Christian?" I was like, "Well, yeah, I suppose," but like, I said, the problems I have aren't with Christianity; they're with Christians. That's who my issue is with, right?
Yeah.
I've read enough of the Bible and read enough of the words of Jesus to figure out he'd be a pretty cool cat to hang out with. I'd probably like him. You know what I mean? Like,
He'd be in my foursome.
right? Exactly. And he's good with the fish and the wine. So like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
like-
this
I
is
could
the thing.
probably split up the pot too, because
when people don't like when people don't when people are the Christians that don't like consumption of alcohol, the Mormons for instance don't like consumption of alcohol, but they like Christ. I'm like, what was his first miracle?
yeah.
He made wine, right?
right, water into wine,
Why did he make wine?
Yeah.
because a buzz makes you feel good.
Because they ran out.
Well, that too.
Exactly.
Because when you're living under the Romans, you want to feel buzzed so that you don't remember. You remember that you're living under the
They
Romans.
drank so much wine that he had to make more.
Yeah.
Because
This
what
is
have the
good.
Romans ever done for us? The aqueduct.
You guys are
Yeah.
amazing. I'm in no hurry, but I wanted to say, if I may, a couple of things. Like,
Sure. Well, before we are bumping up close to an hour, and
Yeah.
we can go over, but it's like we usually like to. I've watched the video Insights demographic, whatever you call them, and even when I think a conversation is pretty compelling, it sort of goes like this, like like it gets people get long in the tooth, and I'll watch the rest of it later, and they don't. So around an hour is where it seems to be a sweet spot.
so I had a couple of brief things that I wanted to say. Just because if I have an audience as a Christian, even in a very liberal sense of the word, I want to espouse the things that I think are useful. And like I said, I think sharing Jesus and what his message and way of life is worthwhile today. I think if all the people who claimed to be Christians acted the way that Christ wanted us to behave, we would have virtually none of the problems that we have in America and probably throughout the rest of the world. So I do believe there's some hope there. That's the first thing. Another thing, and this is a reason I'm spiritual. I love that you use the word spiritual, because at the end of the day, spiritual to me means way more than Christian means. It means that you're constantly seeking connection with something that's bigger than and outside of yourself. And even if that's just other people, I think that's a beautiful word. And I love that you said that. And, but what I would say is something that happened to me, it'll sound crazy, it'll make me look crazy, but maybe a year and a half ago, I was standing I'm always looking for meaning and purpose in my life. And particularly being a survivor of long-term depression, if you turn it into about yourself, it goes bad pretty quickly. And one morning I was standing in the shower and I literally heard a voice inside my head that said, starting today, you'll be the best thing that happens to at least one other person every day for the rest of your life. And since that day, every day for me is a treasure hunt. I wake up, I leave my house.
I like that.
I look for somebody.
That's just fucking beautiful. I really like that.
Thank you. Every day, I mean it. Every day, I leave my house.
I have to be a dick because I'm an asshole. Do you ever cheat and just say, "Fuck, I didn't do anything. Here's $1 to a homeless guy," and then you're.
Oh my God, I can't. Okay, you got me. What I do is order Grubhub. I order Grubhub and tip the guy at 20. That's what I do. If I get to the end of the day and I can't find something, that's what I do.
So on Black Friday, when I announced that all of my books on Amazon are on sale for cheap and you bought 3 of them, you're like, fuck it, I got nothing to do. I'm going to buy this asshole's books.
You were not my person. I can tell you were not my person that day, but you're welcome nonetheless. So you sold 5 books.
Well, thank you for that. Yes, that was wonderful. That was very. I think I got you in trouble with your wife. She's the one that actually texted me, or not texted, put it like, is there something I should know about you and my husband here? This package of all my shit.
Barrett, what my wife doesn't know is I've been trying to get him to have a cup of hot chocolate with me for 2 years. But then we get the global pandemic. It saved you.
Funny, yeah, as I was going to say, I've been blaming COVID for 2 years. Like, it's coming. It's coming.
We're going to have a pandemic.
It's going to happen. I'm just...
it's been 100 years.
I don't leave my basement. This is how I interact with people, like from the safety of a computer screen. I see
you and Howard Stern. You and Stern. So that's one thing that I like to share, and since maybe a few people will see this, it's seriously, it's like a treasure hunt. I go out and I look at people's faces and I try to find somebody that looks like, maybe they could use some encouraging. My wife and I have been pretty fortunate, and so
I'm sorry. Again, I'm an asshole, but when you say that, you see someone's face and you try. The first thing that pops in my head is like you just going, "Have you found Jesus?" Like I know that's not what you do, but
I never mentioned Jesus. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna have to change my spiel. I got to get more Zig Ziglar on these people, but no, that's what does happen occasionally is that you do something good for someone, and I insist on doing it quietly, but sometimes someone finds out, or they'll message you later and they'll say, why do you do those things for other people? And because I believe in the continuity of the universe. I believe in the energetic exchange of the universe. I think that's God, and I think that's worth pursuing for all of us. And I think it's worth encouraging other people to contemplate the possibility that there's something bigger than yourself, and that there is an opportunity, and maybe even that energetic opportunity exists outside of space and time, and the hope that comes from that the people that we love, the people that die, the people that we know will die in our lifetimes, even our children when we're gone, the fact that we can sense some continuity with them and the comfort that brings. That's why I've adopted my faith, I guess, at the end of the day, and it's good enough for me.
I think that's fantastic. I have nothing assholish to say about that at all.
You're sweet.
That's a first.
Yeah, I know.
My goodness. But to write this
I know
day
you've been
down.
being kind to me, Barrett. It's really delightful. You have a fabulous face.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
I didn't do it. My parents. It's mostly their doing. Yes, indeed.
Well, thanks for coming on. I don't like to speak for Barrett, even though but I think that we would both love to have another discussion with you at some point in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be totally into that. That'd be really fun.
Because there's so many different avenues we can go down and different paths, and maybe, just maybe, I won't have to keep muting myself because whatever's fucking hissing in the background. Could either of you hear it the entire time when I was muting myself? Okay, good. Hopefully the mic isn't picking it up, but the furnace shut down, which is nice because it's supposed to, but there's something just back there.
It's probably a snake.
I hate snakes. Oh, that's why I loved Raiders of the Lost Ark as a kid. When I saw that, I'm like, my soulmate. He hates
Don't call him a doctor.
Do you? I didn't ask you this up front because I don't think to, because you're not like Barrett and I. What I do here at the end is I'm gonna mention that I'll pull him up. Let's change this to. Can I do it from here? Yep. So Barrett Antar Goodwin is the musical director of the Katie Henry Band. So that can be found at katiehenrymusic.com. You can also visit antargoodwin.com. You can find go ahead. You can find Katie Henry on Spotify, Apple Music, so you can stream her songs, and that will be Barrett playing on them. Anything else you want to plug quick? Sometimes we try and plug a gig, but not really.
Nothing really coming up. I mean, we have a live stream. I think we're doing January 9th.
All right, we'll plug that a couple times because we'll talk every week. But I'll try and get more about that. Is that going to be a Facebook Live or?
Yeah, but it's gonna be like a real actual show. Like we're gonna have a space, and it's gonna be all decked out, and it's
Oh,
gonna
nice.
be full band. So it's gonna be fun.
Like Metallica did the couple times already.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
it's gonna be really fun.
That's what I was leading up to. Is anything you want to plug? Do you want people to follow you on Twitter? Do you want to put your Twitter handle up? Do you want people to follow you on Instagram, or do you want to just be left alone?
Anonymous father of at least 8.
So then I will make myself big and ugly. Here we go. Hi everyone. That's my name down there, and this I always get the camera wrong. I always point to the wrong side because I'm pointing.
You just did.
NathanTimmel.com. That's where everything is. You can look up Nathan Timmel on Amazon for the books I told you about, and I have comedy on Apple Music, and the same place you're going to find Katie Henry. You're going to find a bunch of my comedy CDs, albums, whatever you want to call it. So, all right. Thanks again for joining us. Let's do this again in a couple months, so it doesn't become like, oh, they're talking about Christianity again. Let's put a little space in between it and do it again.
Yeah, that was really fun. Yeah, nice to meet you, Mike.
Yeah, I love that you're a musician too. My little brother is an improvisational comic.
Okay.
And he's a screenwriter in LA, and he's a musician as well.
Oh, very cool.
So yeah, I would also offer, if you ever do want to talk about politics from the perspective of a conservative who renounced Trump, I would love that too. So I don't know.
I would say that, except finally we'll be done with. Well, no, because he'll keep hanging around. We'll have to do. Maybe we'll find something different to complain about politically come January. Let's move that up.
Yeah.
Let's just in America.
Whatever you come back with, we'll have an open-ended conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's plenty of opportunities to practice patience in this country politically, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you guys so much for inviting me.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for watching, everyone, or listen if you choose not to watch.
Indeed. I wouldn't blame you. See you.